Hey guys, in this video we'll be exploring the solid tools and how we could use solids to interact to create unique and interesting shapes. So firstly, we'll use some of the solid tools to draw a couple of shapes with, and then we'll interact those tools using the solid editing tools over there. So let's start by having a look at what we can do. If I right click my solid tools over there, you'll get a flyout menu illustrating all the different solids we can actually use. Now they are, if I hover over the box tool, the cylinder tool, the sphere tool, and you'll find out that these tools work exactly like their curve counterparts, except that they render a solid object when done instead of just a curve. As a silly example, I'm going to select the box tool. In my top viewport, I'll start by dragging out a shape, left click and drag out. And now I can type in 20, hit enter, 20, hit enter, and type in 20 and hit enter. And I get a solid object, a solid box. I can now grab that box and explode it if I wanted to. And now it's broken down into its individual surfaces. Fairly simple. I can also draw a cylinder, typing its dimensions 2 if I wanted to, or I can draw a sphere. Similarly, I could draw an ellipse, and these are exactly the same as the curve counterparts, except they add one extra dimension we can define to create a solid object. I'm going to delete those, and I'm going to have some of those interact so we can see how we edit those. So I'm going to start by drawing a box. I'm going to draw this box at 20 by 20 by 20. I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to say copy with my copy tool. I'm going to click on this end, and I'm going to make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 copies of it. I invite you to follow along, do exactly the same thing. So I suggest you pause now and follow along and do the same thing. So you can copy what I do and get a little practice in along the way. Okay, so next up, I'm going to draw a couple of spheres on the corners of these. So I'm going to make sure my end snap is turned on, and I'm going to select the sphere tool. I'm going to hover on the end of the third sphere, and I'm going to drag out. Now I want to draw a sphere with a diameter of 10. Now currently the sphere tool is on radius, so I'm going to click on the word diameter to define the diameter, not the radius. And I'm going to type in 10 and hit enter. I'm going to do the same thing on the other corner. 10, enter. 10, enter. 10, enter. So the last 4 of these, I made the sphere on the end there. Okay, so we start off with I'm going to maximize my perspective window so you can see a little bit more clearly. The first way I'd like to edit a solid object is by possibly rounding some of the corners to make it more aesthetically pleasing and more ergonomic. So under my solid editing tools over there, the first one, top one, is Boolean. If I right click that, these are all of my solid editing tools. The very first one is the fillet edges. Now, just like filleting the edges of a curve, if I select that, I can define the radius for my fillet and then round out corners. So I'm going to go ahead and say, click on the radius and type in 5, hit enter. And I can now click on some of these edges, the ones I'd like to fillet. So I'm going to do these ones and that one and that one and that one, but not do the bottom one so you can see the contrast between the filleted and non-filleted edges. Once I've done that, I hit enter. It gives me a visual confirmation of what the fillet will look like. So I hit enter again, and it fillets or rounds out all of my corners for me. That's called a fillet, an exact rounding of all corners. Now another option we have is called chamfer, which basically cuts all corners at a specific preset angle. They are found here under the surface editing tools as well, but that's our chamfer tool over there. Now I'm going to enter the chamfer distance before we start again. I'm going to go ahead and say chamfer. It'll say the next distance. I want to make that, let's make that 4, enter. And now I'll select the edges I want to chamfer. Exactly the same as I did with the previous one. Hit enter. And you'll see it cuts all of those corners at a 45 degree. So that's a handy thing if we don't want to round them out exactly or add a little bit of extra geometry. That's a nice way of doing it. If we design for machining or CNCing, this is an easy way to create edges that have been finished, that are still sharp, but have been finished so they're not sharp and will cut you. Next up, we can start having or have shapes interact with each other. So there is one sphere, there is one cube, but you see they currently occupy the same space, which isn't really possible because two things can't occupy the same space at the same time. But we want these to interact. Now there are 4 ways we can make these interact. That's why we've drawn 4 cubes here. And I'm going to illustrate the Boolean tools now. We can find them over here. The first one is Boolean, but we have 4 options for Boolean tools. The first one is Boolean union. That takes 2 objects that occupy the same space and make them one. Let's give it a go. I'm going to select that. It says select surfaces or polysurfaces to union. So I'm selecting the sphere and the cube, and I hit enter. Now you'll see it looked like that corner disappeared now. If I select them now, you'll see the sphere and the cube is the same thing now. They're one part. And to illustrate what happened, I'm going to say explode. I'm going to select this. And you'll see if I move this out of the way now, it deleted the corner of my cube. It deleted that section or quadrant of my sphere, and it made them one thing. I want to Control Z for the move. You'll see they're 2 things. And now I can just select those and join them again. And they're one solid, valid polysurface. One closed, valid, solid polysurface. Let's see what the other Boolean tools do. These are all still separate. So I'm going to go ahead and try the second one. The second one is Boolean difference. Okay, let's see what that does. In my command line, it says select surfaces or polysurfaces to subtract from. Okay, I'm going to select the cube. And I'm going to hit enter because it says press enter when done. Now my command line says select surfaces or polysurfaces to subtract with. What is going to be my cutting object? That's my sphere. I hit enter, and you can see it uses the sphere to cut a section of my cube away, and then it creates the surface in the cutaway section to create a valid closed polysurface. That's quite useful. So I can use one object to cut another object. Next up, we're going to use the Boolean intersection tool. So my command line says select first surfaces or polysurfaces. I'm going to select the cube. I'm going to press enter when done. And now it says select second set of polysurfaces. That's my sphere. Now if I hit enter, only where those 2 objects overlapped is left. It deletes everything else, but this object is now a valid closed polysurface. Only the section where they overlapped. And let's have a look at that last Boolean tool now. The last one is Boolean split. It says select surfaces or polysurfaces to split. I'm going to select both the cube and the sphere, and I'm going to hit enter. And now it says select cutting objects or surfaces. I'm going to select both again. Now, nothing happened. Or did it? I can now move my cube away, and you'll see I get the same result as I did with Boolean, the same result as I did with my first tool, the Boolean difference. But I also got a Boolean difference section out of the sphere. And then lastly, I also got the same thing as I did with Boolean intersection. But now I have 2 of those. So Boolean split leaves you all of the remaining parts, but does do the Boolean as it did with the other examples. It doesn't delete anything. It leaves you with all the parts. So those are your surface editing tools you're most likely to use or will use most often. Your Boolean tools, your chamfer tool, and your fillet tool. All right. See you in the next one.